Hi YouTube. Today we're going to be looking at a variety of high capacity magazines, and we're going to talk about some of the controversy involved with them and some of the problems they can cause with reliability and why they are or are not scary. So we have a variety of them right here on the table here in front of us. And we're going to go through a few of these, and I'm going to tell you some of the pros and cons to them, and tell you why some of these are good choices and some of them aren't. So we'll start with the 1911. 1911, a lot of people think are unreliable, and that's normally like Gucci Glockers. It's never on the 1911, and they don't know how to properly run one. Don't understand that it's 100+ year old design. It's been around since the beginning of time, and it fired 6,000 rounds without one malfunction when it was adopted by the military in 1911. The Gucci Glockers don't understand that. What they do is they buy a $400 Rock Island and take it out. If it has one malfunction, they said it's not as good as a Glock. First thing you always do when you start with a semi-automatic weapon that starts giving you problems is you look at the magazine. And I like to run these Wilson Combat magazines. These things are extremely reliable. These people are the gold standard of making 1911 magazines. And usually you can fix almost any 1911 reliability issue by buying these. Now, the reason that people don't buy these are they do cost a little bit more than a regular GI style 1911 magazine, and I don't have a GI style magazine on the table. I forgot to grab one, but these things are usually in the $30 to $35 range. A GI magazine can be bought for $10. And people's rationale is, well, I could buy 3 of those for one of these. Well, this one's going to work. This one's got an awesome follower on it. It's years of design, engineering that went into designing this follower and this steel body. These are really good magazines. They're made by Wilson Combat, and you're not going to go wrong with these. Now, if you wanted to get into the extended magazines, once again, this is a Wilson Combat. This is the 10-round magazine. Same story. They build quality stuff. You can put 10 rounds in a 45 ACP and a 1911. This base plate sticks out below the gun, but it's no different than what people do to other weapons. But this brand has a reputation of being very reliable. So if I was running a 1911, this is nothing. I would run nothing but Wilson Combat magazines. They're gonna give you the best reliability out of all the magazines. They know what they're doing, folks. They build really good stuff, and magazines is one of the things that they've done. Even before they started building their own custom 1911s, their magazines is what people run. It doesn't matter what brand your gun is, run Wilson Combat magazines. They're known. Next thing we're going to go into is the very popular AR-15 platform. Now, the AR-15 platform is a pretty reliable weapon. Usually when you start having problems with it, it's usually in the magazines. What I run in them, I run Wilson Combat magazines. Now, you can run PMags in them also. They seem to be pretty reliable. These are a little bit more costly, but I know they work. It's a brand that I trust. They have a good follower in them. Wilson Combat magazines, once again, this is a 30-round magazine, and they just work real well. They cost a little bit more than your standard PMag, but it's not a lot more. And I think PMags are also a great magazine. But you're going to start getting into trouble when you get into like the older metal style GI magazines. They have a worn out spring or a bad follower in it. Usually when you start having cycling issues in an AR, you might want to look into what kind of magazine you are. Put a good magazine in it and see if the gun runs in before you start tweaking on the gun. It's usually always the magazine. Now, when you get into the higher capacity, if you want a little bit higher capacity, this is a drum. And this is the only drum that I found that works. This is the PMag D60. This thing is awesome. It does not give you any reliability issues. This is going to be a little bit lengthy. This is not something you're going to take to the range or load, or if you're in a gun battle, for God's sake, you're not going to load this during it. But if you have these preloaded, they work really well. But if you start getting some of these cheap pawn shop or made in China drum magazines, they're not going to work. But this is a reputable brand. They have the same kind of follower that's on their other magazines. These things just work really well. I've never had a cycling issue with these. I've rapid fired these things, and they blocked the bolt open on the last round, and everything, they function exactly how a regular 30 round magazine does. So if you're a drum person, don't go buy the made in China 100 round dual sided drums. Buy these. These are 60 rounds, and just buy 2 of these. Just simple to pull one of these out and put another one in, and you know these work. So if you're buying them just because they look cool, you're buying them for the wrong reason. Buy them because they work. 60 rounds in a drum. It is a little heavy, but it works. Now, if you want to know what nut to buy, this is a 60 round also. This is a double stack 60 round magazine, extended magazine for an AR. This is some German name. And I was told that these things work really well. So I purchased one. It looks like it has a decent follower in it. It looks like a really good idea. It's a lot lighter than the drum. It's going to extend down a lot further than a 60 round drum. But it's a lot slimmer profile and a lot lighter. I bought one of those things and never could get it to work. It doesn't work at all. It'll cycle a few rounds and it'll hang up, and it's really hard to load 60 rounds in it, and I'm not gonna mess with something that doesn't work. So people buy stuff that looks cool. You know, the Gucci Glocker guys that like to have the big thick magazine hanging out of their rifle and put it on Instagram. Well, that's not me. I need things that function, and this is definitely not the route to go. If you wanted a 60 round magazine, buy a PMag drum, and that will get your rifle reliable. If your rifle's not working with one of those in it, it's probably the rifle. But this, it's not going to be the rifle. It's probably going to be magazine related. Now, when you get into the smaller calibers, like the Ruger 1022, they have a zillion things you can do to the 1022. Has as much aftermarket support as the Glock. When you start getting these big banana clips, you want to buy the Ruger brand. These are extended Ruger 25 round banana clip looking magazines, but these things work. They don't give you any reliability issues or anything like that. I know you see the people that Gucci those things out have the clear ones where you can see all the rounds in them, and they never work. They always give you reliability issues. 22 can be a little finicky anyway when you're shooting it out of a semi-automatic. So stick with Ruger magazines and you'll be fine. If you really want a high capacity one, this one's the double one. See, it has rounds on each side. You pull it out and take the cover off and put the other side in. So this one holds 50 rounds of 22, but it's made by Ruger. It's a pretty neat little concept if you're not wanting to reload a lot, and it's kind of heavy and bulky and all that, but it does work. It's a true Ruger magazine. Don't buy the clear stuff. Don't buy the flea market stuff, the made in China stuff, just because it looks cool. Buy something that works. This is a proven product. Now, we go back to the 1911s. If you want to be an idiot, and I guess I was an idiot, you can buy a 50-round drum for a 1911, and I have one here. And I can tell you what, I bought this just because I could. Some guy was selling it at a gun show. I knew it wasn't going to work, but I bought it because it looks cool, and who wouldn't want a 50-round drum for their 1911? It's made by Pro Mag, and I can tell you it doesn't work. It doesn't cycle worth anything, but I mean, you can play around with it and get it to work, but this wouldn't be a life and death situation thing I would rely on because I get more capacity. But people want to talk about capacity in a 45 ACP. Here it is. 50 rounds in a 1911, and man, it weighs about 100 pounds. It feels like this one's loaded right now, and it weighs about 100 pounds, it seems like. But I bought it to be cute and just to say I have it, and I do. Now, Glocks. Glock 9mm is probably one of the most common weapons in the world. This is just a Glock 19 magazine, just a regular factory magazines. Usually when you start having reliability issues with a Glock, it's because somebody's bought some aftermarket magazines made in Korea or China or something like that. Glock makes good magazines. Their weapons work. They always work. They work when you use their magazines. You start buying this aftermarket crap, it's not going to work. So anytime, once again, you start having reliability issues with any kind of semi-automatic weapon, the first thing you need to look at is the magazine. Try another magazine in it. You usually try and stick with factory magazines if all possible. And there's a few exceptions out there, but stick with factory magazines with most weapons, and that will give you the best chance of being reliable. But if you want to get extended, Glock makes 33-round 9mm magazines, and these are two different colors. The Gucci Glockers can have them in two different colors, but don't buy the aftermarket ones that you see people selling at the gun show. These are actual Glock manufactured magazines, and they work. They work just as good as the small ones. And the cool thing about this, no matter if you have a 9mm Glock, if 9mm is your thing because your wrists are too weak to shoot 45s, you can literally slide this into any double stack Glock that shoots 9mm, all the way to Glock 26, all the way up to the Glock 17 will accept these, and they're just going to hang out the bottom. So when you do Glocks, do your Glock brand of magazines. What you don't want to do is buy a drum magazine that's cheap. Once again, this is a cheap knockoff, probably made in China. I don't even know where this thing's made. This one's loaded. It'll work sometimes, and sometimes it won't. Now, I know the Gucci Glockers like to stick a drum out the bottom of their handgun. And once again, I bought this because it was cheap, and I thought it was funny, but it doesn't work. It doesn't really work that well. But I mean, sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. But usually Glocks don't run well with aftermarket magazines in them. And this thing's stupid. This thing weighs a ton too for a 9mm pistol. But if you want an extended magazine, I mean, this is 50. One of these is 33. What's the difference? Two of them trumps this. It's lighter. It's easier to maneuver. How hard is it to drop a magazine out if you really needed that much ammunition? But people will do this because it looks good, and they'll sacrifice reliability over looks. Now, 22. Glock makes 22. This is another prime example. This thing is stupid. It only holds 10 rounds of 22, and their little Glock 44. But the pistol is pretty reliable, and when I say pretty reliable, I'm talking the 22 long rifle rimfire terms, because, you know, those things can be known to be unreliable, rimfire ones. But they do have aftermarket magazines that hold more rounds than the 10, but I like to stick with Glock because Glock magazines work, and I know there's probably a reason why they only made this thing hold 10. I'm sure it has to do with the reliability. It's hard to get a 22 magazine to be reliable anyway. Once again, stick with the factory magazines. You can't go wrong. Now, your Mini 14s, these magazines are pretty expensive. They're not as readily available as AR. You can always sell a Mini 14 magazine because there's a hole in the front. Get its focus. And it'll have just a little notch back here that fits in. Now this is a pretty hard to find. Pretty scarce magazine. It's a 40 round stainless magazine for a Mini 14. I have it in the one that I own that looks like an A-Team. The A-Team gun. I have a short video on it. This seems to be a pretty reliable magazine. Usually with these you want to get a metal one, and you usually want to get a Ruger one if you can. Now Ruger doesn't make a 40 round stainless steel magazine, that's why I own that. But usually the 30 round and the 20 round ones, you want to stick with the manufacturer and it'll always work. When you start getting these weird polymer ones and all these off-brand ones, the Mini 14 will give you reliability issues, and it's not the rifle, it's the magazine. I'm lucky on this one because this one happens to work, and I know it. I have another one that does not work, a stainless 40 round one, that this one does work. We used it this weekend. You see a little dirty on top. This one cycles just fine, locks the bolt open on the last shot. But usually you want to stick with your manufacturer of the weapon. They usually manufacture the magazine with the weapon. The most reliable magazine on here is the speed loader. This is a cool speed loader for a 357 Magnum. These always work. These and like moon clips for like the 45 ACPs and all that. This one happens to be for a Colt Python. It's pretty cool. Somebody gave this to me and I thought it was neat. This is the only one I have like this. I have a few less expensive looking ones. Actually, this one's the least expensive because I got it for free. But speed loader is a real good option if you're a revolver person. You know, you can do it pretty quick. But the other thing I want to talk about is these high capacity magazines. There's a lot of states out here and a lot of government people that do not believe in high capacity magazines, and it's stupid, folks. When you limit somebody to 10 rounds, you can do just as much damage with 10 rounds as you can anything else. Usually it's only 1 round. There's a few small examples of people losing their mind and going and committing horrible crimes with these weapons, but it's not the weapon's fault. It's the same thing saying if you ran over somebody and killed them in your car, is it really the car's fault? No, it was the driver's fault. Somebody gets impaired and they're drunk or high on some type of drugs and go out and kill somebody in a car. Is it really the car manufacturer's fault? No, it's the person operating the car. It's the same with weapons. You're going to have some bad apples in the world, and I don't know the solution to stopping that, but you're just going to have bad apples. It has nothing to do with the capacity of the magazines. None of these magazines here are dangerous because I own them. And I'm not a dangerous person, and I don't plan on going and committing a mass shooting or anything. But I can promise you this, if I took this 10 round magazine, you can do just as much damage with this as you could a 60 round magazine. Because all I have to do is bring 6 of these and just change them out. Or the revolver. I mean, these things can be just as dangerous. So it's very stupid. And one of the big manufacturers, Ruger, Bill Ruger, he was not a very cool person in the gun world. When the Mini 14 came out, he would not manufacture a magazine that held over 10 rounds. And when they were going to pass that assault weapons ban, he wrote a letter to Congress saying, well, it's easier just to ban the magazines. put a magazine ban on. Well, what kind of a gun Second Amendment person even suggests that? And it made him a very unpopular person, and they suffered financially. I think it wasn't until he died that they started producing, Ruger themselves started producing high capacity magazines for Mini 14. It's crazy. But Smith & Wesson, the same deal. They claimed in the early 90s they were going to stop selling their weapons in any store that sold quote unquote assault rifles. Well, they suffered financially from it, and they put that lock on it that everybody seems to hate. Really doesn't make that big difference, but it's a personal thing with me. I know why they did it, and that's why I don't like the locks on the side of the Smith & Wesson revolvers. But anyway, folks, I want to run through this and let you know, if you're having problems with your semi-automatic weapon, handgun, rifle, whatever it have you, always start with the magazine first. Always use good quality magazines. Don't buy knockoff cheap stuff like this or this. Buy good quality, well-known, proven magazines, and if it gives you problems from then you can start looking at the weapon. But always start with the magazines, and magazines are 90% of the time going to be your problems. But anyway, folks, I've drugged this on long enough. Thank you very much for watching my video, and you folks have a great day.